Welcome to the Death Smile podcast, where we understand that death smiles at us all, and so in return, the only thing we do is smile back. Thanks for listening today. My name is Javier, and today we are going to discuss fear. One of the first books I read in my adult life is called The 50th Law by Robert Greene. This was about 2 years ago. I was going through a pretty rough patch in my life, and I was looking for a change, so I decided that I was going to sign up at the local library. And I knew of Robert Greene from before. My coworkers had mentioned him before from his 48 Laws of Power, which is a very popular book. Also ended up reading that later. Recommend that one as well. So the 50th Law stood out to me only because I knew of the author. I knew of Robert Greene. Which, by the way, the 50th Law, I also recommend that one. It's a great read. If you're someone who's looking to get into reading or someone who just enjoys reading, I definitely recommend it. It's shorter. It's only about 250 pages, if I remember correctly. And that was good for me at the time because I was a new reader, so it was less intimidating than, let's say, like a 500-page book. Even now, I enjoy reading shorter books than I do longer books. I feel as if they get the message across a little bit better, but that's just my personal opinion. Now, this book is written by Robert Greene, and it's about 50 Cent, who actually, after I read the book, I gained a lot of respect for. He is tough, man. That dude is tough. The stuff that he has said inside the book, the principles he lives by, the things that he's done throughout his life, the way he carries himself, it's all super inspirational stuff, and I took a lot from it. So much so that the book literally left an actual mark on me. On the back cover of the book, there is a Latin phrase that says nihil timendum est, which means fear nothing. I actually ended up getting that as my very first tattoo on my right arm, which is kind of fitting because I was actually afraid of getting tattoos up to that point. I was afraid that they would hurt too much, which, by the way, if you haven't gotten a tattoo yet and you're thinking about it, just go ahead and get it because they don't hurt that bad, believe me. So now I'm thinking to myself after I read this book, fear nothing. That's what the whole entire book was about, right? Fear nothing. And so I started to approach every single situation without fear, or I at least tried to eliminate fear from my approach. So I thought to myself, okay, let's go ahead and analyze this. Where in my life have I feared? Where in life do we as human beings tend to fear the most? Let's dig down to what the very root of fear is. Let's dig down to the very root of what constitutes fear, of what makes somebody fearful, and what defines someone as being fearful. Now, fear is, we got to remember, it's not just, oh my goodness, scary ghost, that's creepy, that's spooky, I'm afraid. No. It's not just that. That is fear, and that's very large, and it's on the surface. Obviously, that's fear. But fear can also be something so much smaller, so much more hidden and subtle. For example, let's take laziness, okay? Think of laziness. And when you're lazy, as I have been in my life, and still I am sometimes, when you're lazy, you might just think it's because you don't feel like getting up, you don't feel like doing anything, you're sitting on the couch, you're playing video games, or you're watching Netflix, whatever the case is, you just do not feel like getting up and actually doing something. But it's not just that. There's a level of fear involved with laziness. Let's dig down to the very root of what laziness is. And within the roots of laziness resides many things, of course. There's many things that make up a lazy person. But when you get down to the very bottom, you're going to find that laziness really is just a fear of moving. It's a fear of motion, a fear of giving up your immediate occupation, whether that be playing video games or on your phone or watching Netflix. You're afraid to get up and do something else. You're afraid to produce. Now, this is very fitting and very common. We live in a very consumer-heavy society, and in this society, the ratio of consumers to creators is completely off balance. There's maybe 2 creators to every 5 million consumers, and I mean, that's just a random number that I'm throwing out there, but that's how I see it. That's what I see. And obviously, like I said, I could be completely wrong about that. But I see so many more consumers than I do creators. So many more people are stuck in this constant loop of consume. Whether that be social media, movies, video games, music, literal food, alcohol, whatever it is. We just consume all the time. And there's a lack of originality, a lack of creation. And this is what allows the people at the top to stay at the top, by the way. They keep creating and we keep consuming their creation without creating anything ourselves, which good for them. They got there somehow, right? But there is also a path of our own as well. And in order to go down it, We just have to eliminate the fear of being lazy. We have to eliminate fear in general. And not only is laziness the only facet of fear, but there is a lot of other instances within our lives in which we are being held back by our fear. For example, social anxiety. Now, social anxiety disorder is an actual mental illness that can be diagnosed within someone in very serious circumstances. And I am not a medical professional, so I am not going to speak on that side of the spectrum. However, on the more general, basic level, social anxiety is something that many people deal with in their everyday lives, and there could be many different reasons for this. So, again, let's analyze. What is anxiety? Let's go ahead and dig down to the roots of anxiety and unroot it. Let's see if we can figure out what it is. Anxiety is the fear of uncertainty, a fear of a lack of control. We don't have control over a certain something, and because of that, we fear it. The fear of the unknown is quite possibly the greatest phobia in human existence, right? I mean, at the root of many other phobias is the fear of the unknown. And this is essentially what anxiety is. When we feel like we don't have control, we might feel some undesirable outcome might happen or something bad might happen. And that word might, the word might speaks volumes. It speaks on the lack of knowledge of something to come or something that could currently be happening. And this is what happens to someone with social anxiety, someone who experiences this sort of anxiety, or someone who is shy, someone who is afraid to talk to a stranger, someone who is afraid to walk down the street because they feel as if everyone is looking at them and judging them, someone who is afraid that they can't hold a conversation because they're not interesting enough to talk to, someone who is afraid to make eye contact in a conversation. We are afraid when we feel this way. We are afraid. We are afraid of what people may think of us. We are afraid of what people might say to us that can hurt us. But at the very bottom of all this fear of unknown happenings, is the fear of ourselves. The fear that we are not good enough, that we are not great enough, that we do not have the capability to walk up to a stranger and hold a conversation, that we are not capable of pursuing a friendship with someone we find interesting, or pursuing even a romantic relationship with someone who we are attracted to in some way. It's all fear. And so imagine if we could live in a world in which we checked our own fear. Remember, fear is a natural defense mechanism. It activates our fight or flight response, and it alerts us of some perceived threat. But most of the time, especially in our soft cushion lives, fear is uncalled for. It is an invader, an unwanted intruder that keeps us from doing so much because we irrationally believe that we are in some type of danger from whatever it is that we have perceived as being a threat. So, choose not to fear. And while I understand it's not that easy just to say no to fear, the great thing about being a human is that we have the ability to override our initial instinct to fight or flight. We have the ability to we have the ability to see what it is that we fear and say, you know what? Nah, I'm just going to do this anyway. Seneca, who was an ancient Roman Stoic philosopher, sent a letter to his friend Lucilius, and they were talking about this very same fear and anxiety that we deal with in our modern lives. And he did a pretty good job of offering a different perspective by saying, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, is this the condition that I feared? Is this what I feared? Is this what troubled me so? When we push past our limitations and we overcome our fears, when all is said and done, we'll look back at them and we'll say this very thing. Is this what I feared? Is this what was so scary? No, it's not scary at all.